This is a wonderful opportunity for me. We've been doing these pop-up podcasts now, and with us we have Mario Morris, who, among many things, has had a very distinguished career on the gridiron and off the gridiron. And so I thought it would be fun, given the fact that where we are right now in college athletics is there's a whole dimension that we're still trying to understand what we're trying to do. But the most important thing is that only about Mario, you know this, only about 1% of the people who have ever played in Division I football, basketball, et cetera, ever see a paycheck from anyone. And so the whole question is, how does one think about education as part of what your career is? So maybe you might tell everyone a little bit about your career. I'd appreciate it. Okay.
Well, I want to say it's an honor to be here with you. You're such a leader, and I've read a lot of your work, and I really am appreciative of being here. Well, right now I'm the Senior Vice President of Administration and Chief Financial Officer at the NCAA. If you had told me that many years ago, I would have laughed you out of the room. I would not be here. I am from Decatur, Alabama, small town, North Alabama. I am the oldest of eight kids. We grew up very, very humbly, very humble means. And, my mother and grandmother saw a spark in me. I loved education from the very beginning. I love education and sports from the very beginning. And so they encouraged me to go to higher education route and get more education. They knew, I still have a card from my grandmother where she said, continue to pursue your education. It lead you to a better life. And it certainly has done that. Um, I've had a lot of varied experiences. As you know, I've got my bachelor's degree, my finance degree from Alabama, and then my Juris Doctor and PhD from Wisconsin. And so I'm a lifelong, some people say I'm a lifelong student, but I just love higher education. I'm an adjunct professor. I've been an adjunct professor for 10 years. And so I love, education and what it does for you. It opens up so many doors and so many possibilities. It really just opens up the world. And I love that about it.
So when you played football, did you have a desire to go on into business, or what was motivating you, Mario? I mean,
Yeah.
this is such an unusual path for someone, and then going on and getting a law degree, a PhD. This is one of those inspirational conversations that I want other people. I want these young student athletes. I want everyone to hear about your journey. So what sort of inspired you?
Again, my family, and then just the want of a better life, and a want better life for my siblings. I have a lot of young siblings that look up to me, and a lot of family that looks up to me, and so that drove me a lot. And I would say I've had a nonlinear career. It wasn't always success. It wasn't always roses. There were times where I struggled to balance academics and athletics as well. There were times where I was playing really good on the football field, and I had those glimpses of being a professional player. At some point, and academics would start to suffer. And so, as I finished my career at Alabama, I knew there was a small chance, a very slim chance, that I would go on to play professional football. So I made sure that I graduated with a major that I could find a good job in. And so that really, sort of kept me going. One of the things I can tell you that I didn't do is I didn't, with some intentionality, figure out what I wanted to do afterwards because I still had that hope that I might be able to play football. I didn't plan as well as I should have for the after. And so it took a little while to sort of get on my feet, even with a finance degree, to really figure out sort of what my path was. That should be a lesson. There has to be some intentionality in sort of what you're doing and planning for your future.
Yeah, and I think particularly today we'll just talk about some of our student athletes. Financial literacy among students, period, is almost non-existent. People, kids graduate, they don't, their parents have I have a Harvard trained surgeon. My daughter still has my credit card, so I know how that is. So I think that I think that the issue of financial literacy is so important. And then, at least for those players who are getting some form of compensation through NIL. All of a sudden, the federal government tells them you have to pay taxes and a variety of other things. So, what kind of advice are you giving to? You have children, do you?
I do. I have young children. I started late. I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. So
Yeah,
they keep
well,
me busy. Yes.
yeah. I was going to say, but if you're having children as they're growing up, what kind of advice are you going to give them about whether or not they're going into sports? But how do they prepare for life,
Yeah.
particularly after college?
That's a great question. And again, I believe that you have to have a vision of where you want to go and what you want to do. A couple of things that probably have helped me, and they were later in life, to be honest. As I entered my PhD program, we created what was called a career trajectory. And so we talked about where we wanted to be 5 or 10 years from now. And you looked at people who were in those positions. And as you looked at their qualifications and their experiences, you could compare it to your own. And you could sort of figure out, hey, what will I need to do from an experience standpoint or from an education standpoint to even have a chance to get into that position? And so planning ahead, having some idea of what your career path is, and talk to those people who have ascended to the place where you want to be. I think is just an incredible advice, and it would be advice that I would give my children. If there's something you want to do, ask questions about it. Go talk to people who are doing it. I remember when I went to Alabama, I was in electrical engineering, and I was only in electrical engineering.
You were in electrical engineering. Okay, let's
I
start
was
off
an
with that.
electrical engineer student beginning, and so it was because I grew up in a town that had a lot of factories, and everybody would tell me, "Hey, the engineers make all the money." So I'm like, "Okay, I'm decent academically. Let's go into electrical engineering." And when I got into electrical engineering, I found out that was one thing I found out was a barrier that labs were in the afternoon, so it interfered with football practice. So that was one reason. But I also figured out that hey, I wanted to do something a little bit different than electrical engineering, so I went into finance instead.
Yeah. So who was your coach at Alabama?
Gene Stallings, wonderful man.
Yeah, tell me about what kind of an influence he was in terms of your post football
Yeah.
time. I think that's an important thing. We don't understand that football coaches are also teachers,
Yeah.
and I'm interested to find out. And I know Gene, Coach Stallings had a great reputation, but I'd like to know if he was influential on your life.
Incredibly. He wanted us to, first of all, be good citizens, and then be good students, and then be good football players. And being a good citizen, just being a good person, doing the right things, doing things the way that you should, and making good decisions was very, very important to him. He came out of professional football, and so he came in his first year and he treated us sort of like professional football players and sort of let us sort of, do what we wanted to do. And then he realized he had to tighten up a little bit. And so he did. The results on the field showed we were 7-5 my first year, 11-1 my second year, and 13-0. We won a national championship my third year.
In your
So
third year, right?
yes, sir. So he realized what he needed to do. He was an incredible teacher. I've never seen someone go back and forth across the field and know exactly what's going on and have conversations with individual players. Just very smart, and just such a good man, just very humble. He's very committed to his players. I remember a few years ago, he had some health problems right before reunion we were supposed to have in Tuscaloosa. And he told the doctors he was coming to the reunion. He said, I'm going to see my boys. And he stood in line for 2 hours and talked to every player that came through. And so, he was a junction boy on the Bear Bryant, so he was very tough, but a wonderful person. And I look up to him. I saw him a couple of years ago at the release of one of his movie about him and his son, Johnny, who had Down syndrome and who was around us all the time. And he's just an incredible person.
And the influence that he had on you as you were not only while you were playing, but when you left to go out into the afterworld, so to speak. Did you talk to him about what you ought to do? Did he encourage you to go into football or encourage you to go to financial into the financial world? What kind of encouragement did he give you?
Coach Stallings was very supportive of what we wanted to do. He was really like a parent. Your kids have dreams. He was
Mhm.
supportive of those dreams, whether they were to play football or go on. he knew that for every one of us that football was going to end one day. And so that's why he really wanted us to be good people, to treat people with respect. Every time we walked in the building, we took our hat off, right? There were things that you wanted to do. You wanted to act like a gentleman. For Coach Stallings, and so he just taught us that football will end one day, and so you're here to get your education. That was very, very important to him. He had people sitting in the classrooms and watching, making sure you're going to class. And he was very serious about it. So if you didn't go to class and you needed some summer school credits to, get eligible, he wasn't going to pay for it. He came in and said, "I'm not paying for it." So he was very
Huh.
serious. Yes, he was very serious with his
Yeah.
rules.
Do you think we've lost that today?
I think there's probably a little bit more balance between the student athlete relationship and the coach relationship. I think, in some ways that's good. In some ways, it makes it very challenging. And so I do think, I mean, we have, everybody has their academic standards, but um, I hope that we continue to focus on academics and athletics. I don't think one should coexist without the other in a collegiate setting.
Yeah. So you left Alabama, you went into started out on your career. Tell me a little bit about how you ended up at the NCAA.
Yeah, by chance and by fortune, I guess. My initial career, I started off in finance, and for a few years, and then my mom got sick with breast cancer. She ended up passing away at 44 years old,
Young woman.
and, yeah, and an incredible person. We went through that journey with her, and the one thing I realized at that point was, if there's something you want to do in your life, you better do it. And so I always wanted to go to law school. I didn't know if I was going to be a politician. I knew I probably wasn't going to be arguing in court. I was probably going to be more of a transactional attorney. But I went to law school, University of Wisconsin. Clerked for a firm, didn't really enjoy it. I enjoyed the money that they paid. They paid really well, but I didn't really enjoy it. And I went back into finance. Unfortunately, I went back into finance and the market collapse of 2007, 2008 happened. And that really caused me to take a step back and say, what do I want to do in my life? I had, gained a lot of experience. I had at that time 2 degrees. And by happen chance, I had a friend that was working in the Wisconsin athletic department who I'd known for several years. And they called me and we met for lunch. They asked me to come over and meet some people. I met a few people in the athletic department. The CFO and the compliance person asked me if I would be interested in an internship while I was working, unpaid internship. I decided I would help the CFO. He was new to college athletics, and we developed a budget. About 8 months later, he hired me as his budget director. And during that time, this is another very sort of important thing for me, is helping student athletes. We created a program called Beyond the Game at Wisconsin, and what we did there was help student athletes create a separate identity from their athletic identity. So when they left school, the cliff and the drop wouldn't be as steep. So we wanted them to connect with other students across campus. They had leadership courses, they had student identity courses. We brought in national speakers. And so we really tried to surround them with other influences so they just wouldn't be in the athletic bubble. And it was at that point I knew that I wanted to be in college athletics administration, or in some way helping student athletes for the rest of my life. To see those young men and women develop, and to know that we, participated in that. As a budget director, I helped create, student development departments at Wisconsin and enhance those at Notre Dame. And so, I took that on as a responsibility to be able to help student athletes out in the future. So I'm very excited about that. I didn't plan to come to the NCAA. I was at Notre Dame. I worked for Jack Swarbrick. I loved it. And The NCAA came calling. I knew at that time, we all knew that because they were searching for my job and they were searching for the president's job at the same time. And so my biggest risk was coming into a job knowing that the president wasn't going to be there and I was going to be working for somebody else. President Linda Livingstone at Baylor was the chair of the board at that time, and they got me on the phone with her, and so she convinced me of the profile, the type of candidate she was looking for,
Yeah.
and I couldn't be happier. Working for Charlie Baker, he's very inclusive from a leadership style. I work on a lot of different things at the NCAA. The one thing I didn't want to do was just come in and have people think I was just a bean counter, because I've done so much more than that, and I could have an impact in many places, and he's allowed me to do that.
And you've worked at great places, but Barry Alvarez, was he influential at Wisconsin for you?
Yeah. He was. What I learned from Coach Alvarez was it was how to relate to a coach. And how, sort of how he ran his department was sort of like how he coached. He empowered us to go out and run our own units and make our own decisions. Now, we were going to be accountable for those decisions, but he let his coaches coach and he let us do our jobs as well. And that's one thing from a managerial standpoint that I learned from him is you hire good people and you let them do their work and you get out of their way. And I've incorporated that into my leadership style. I empower my teams, but they also know that they're accountable for those decisions. And so that was, he definitely, because I worked for him for 9 or 10 years, and so he definitely was an influence for me.
Right. Well, he's a very strong-willed, strong-driven, wonderful guy. He really is. And then you move to Jack Swarbrick. Now they're
Yeah, yeah.
two different styles.
Two different styles,
Two,
absolutely.
two different styles, as a matter of fact, and two different institutions in many ways. Both of them, of course, highly competitive academically, but at the same time, highly competitive athletically. So you've been at the top of the mountain, and now, here you are at the top of the mountain with the NCAA. Tell me a little bit about, because we're all wrestling with this. I've been very involved in college athletics, both as university presidents and post presidency, trying to work on getting a bill through Congress, a variety of other things. In fact, I've worked off and on with Charlie Baker and think the world of him. So, right now, viewing it from the lens of the work you're doing, what are the real challenges that we have in college athletics, and more importantly, what are the solutions? That's what I want to know. I'm looking to you to solve the problems, and it may be easier than solving world peace. I have no
Yeah.
idea, but nonetheless, tell me a little bit about what you're seeing.
Yeah, I talked to, when I was at Notre Dame, Jack and I talked about this. He said the most challenging thing that will happen in the next few years, and it's one thing, he's a visionary, so he sees a lot of this stuff coming, is the changing relationship between the student and the university. And how is that relationship governed? How will it continue? And I still think that is a part of it. I think you started off, by talking about that sort of, the coaches for a long time had a lot of power. The administration for a long time had a lot of power. But now that's changed. That dynamic has changed tremendously, with student athletes. And it's become somewhat of a more contractual relationship and transactional relationship with student athletes having sort of the freedom to move and contract, with somebody differently every year. My overall vision for college athletics is to make sure that we preserve the opportunities for our students to compete on the field, on the court, as many of those opportunities as we can, for all of our student athletes. I think it's really important that we stay tethered to the academic mission. If not, then, why are we doing it in college, right? And so it's very important for me, as you can tell, I have three degrees. So education is very, very important to me. I am hopeful that we can get something passed by Congress. I think eventually that's where the answer will come from. If we're not successful in what we're offering today, there may have to be some kind of compromise. And I state this in my dissertation. I studied the historical legal analysis on student athlete employment cases, and so I looked at sort of the different types of employment law and that the cases wrestled with. And sort of my position was, hey, let's go to Congress. Let's see if we can, get something passed. But if we can't, we have to look at other things, maybe such as collective bargaining or other things like that, where you may be able to establish some guidelines. And I know there are a ton of things, wrong with it and a ton of things that you'd have to work through. But we've also got to be prepared. That's another thing that I've always wanted to do is be prepared for alternatives. So if we're not successful in Congress, what's plan B? Right. And so I've encouraged, Charlie and our leadership team to be thinking about that because I think it's very important that we don't get caught flat-footed, that we're still trying to progress and put meaningful sort of guardrails in place and make sure that the sports are healthy. I'm concerned about the out of control spending in athletic departments. And I see it every day. I study this for a living. And so I hope that we can, find some restraint and go forward and create these opportunities for all of our student athletes because it's not just the people who go pro or even the people that play at a high profile level. Sports, intercollegiate athletics is so enriching, not only for the student athlete, but also for the community at large. And that's on campus, that's the alumni. That's how we identify a lot of times with our institutions that where we've been.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that university presidents sorely realize, and that is the fact that college athletics is a way to tell the story about the university. I joke all the time about the fact that I've never been able to get 110,000 people to show up for a chemistry lecture, but I can get them to show up for a football game, and then I can talk about
Right,
chemistry. You know, we can
right,
talk about
right.
those things, and I think
Yes.
that's important. And the intercollegiate system in this country is unique. It represents so much of what universities are about, what the spirit of the institution is, what our alumni and our friends are, so forth. Do you feel like we're in danger of losing that spirit, that camaraderie, that gold, go blue, gold, go,
Yeah.
go scarlet and gray, whatever?
Yeah. To be honest, I don't think so. We just had March Madness here in Indianapolis, and I can tell you, although we're now sharing revenue with student athletes and they're receiving third-party NIL, the fandom still loves college athletics and they love their universities, right? And that was, it was one night, Illinois brought a whole group of people over. The next night, Michigan would bring a whole group of people over. So I think there is such a fandom for college sports that I don't think we will lose it. May it lose some of its luster, maybe. Now, I think if we go too far away from the academic mission, then yeah, I think we might be in danger of it. But I don't think I hope there's not a danger of that. I'll do everything I can to be on the team that keeps it tethered to academics. And so I don't. The attendance numbers are up, the viewership numbers are up. We haven't seen, any kind of decline in any of those things. And so I do think, that we have to continue to want to make the sports healthy and make the system healthier. Because it will chip away at the brand, but I don't see that immediate danger.
Yeah, and one of the things that I think that you in your leadership role and I as a former university president need to be worried about is I'm worried about women's athletics and I'm very worried about the Olympic sports. As you know, given the enormous pressure on athletic departments, there's always going to be an inclination to take those non-revenue generators and say, well, we love you, but we're just not going to be able to support you. What are you thinking about the non-revenue
Yeah.
sports?
Well, I'm a big fan of them. I went to school with people that played in non-revenue sports, and they're my friends. And I wouldn't want to see a day where they weren't given that opportunity to compete at the highest level as well. I think you've started to see a shift in even at the highest level, of Division One sports, and some of the support that the university and the states are providing. I think that there's an investment there on the university's part as well. And I do think, again, spending restraints and sort of reallocating some of the spending still needs to happen. Those are tough conversations. But we have to be realistic. And I think sometimes our competitive nature gets the best of us, right? We think we can win a national championship every year. Guess what, folks? There's only one. There's only one team that's going to win it. And so, what are the reasonable expectations, right, of college athletics and college athletics programs? And to ensure you have to you have to have a strong backbone to lead those departments and to continue to push for funding on a broad base basis. And that's something I've always believed in. I think we had 23 sports at Wisconsin and maybe 26 at Notre Dame. So we were broad based, to make sure we had all of those opportunities. And those are the types of programs that I like to be a part of. It's very important to me to continue to give those student athletes, again, those opportunities. Some of the things that we've been working on here. I got here and was fortunate enough to help push forward the women's basketball invitational tournament, which created more postseason opportunities for our student athletes. My team was very involved in, putting forward the plan to, award units for women's basketball championship. And so we're very proud of that. Probably the third thing that we're proudest of is we really pushed hard for what was called post-eligibility insurance, where we provide insurance to student athletes up to 2 years after they leave or separate from the university. And as we were talking about that, the immediate focus was on Division One and
Right.
creating an obligation for Division One to make sure they were providing for student athletes. I said, and I talked to Charlie. I said, Charlie, we should go ahead and push for Division Two and Division Three. They're student athletes as well. And I was very proud. It was one of those moments where, in a system where you have a lot of self-interested people, and I'm not saying that in a negative way, every president has a board or a board of trustees or a board of regents that they report to. Every athletic director, every conference commissioner has presidents. So everybody has someone that they're accountable to. So, there is a degree of self-interest there. But it was that one period in time where we came together and said, we are going to provide for all of college athletics and we're going to pay for it out of association-wide funding. And I just couldn't have been prouder of that.
I think I think it's absolutely critical that we regenerate that kind of pride and that kind of possibility. So, in 1961, the Sports Broadcasting Act was enacted. Major League Baseball, Major League NFL, Major League Football, Major League baseball. The NCAA opted out of that. As you look back on that, was that a mistake? What do you think the rationale was? I mean, you're the chief financial officer of a big organization, and you can't live in the past. But that's an interesting decision that was made.
Well, a question would be, had they opted in, would they have avoided Oklahoma Board of Regents case, right, and lost the rights to televise football games? You know, I'm not sure, right? And so I do know that that was a seminal moment, in 1984 when NCAA lost that case, and now.
And they lost the Georgia case too, the
And also
Herschel
Georgia case, right, as
right?
well. That always gets it always gets it's border Oklahoma, but then Georgia was also there as well.
Mhm.
And so I think that was a seminal moment. I think that it's always worth exploring what the alternatives are right now, what the opportunities are, right? So is there an opportunity to revisit that? I think so. I think that we should at least be studying the model of what that could look like, right? I mean, because that could potentially increase revenues dramatically to help provide for other sports as well. And so, whether it was a wrong decision back then is really hard. I wasn't there. I don't know what they were thinking through, but is there an opportunity for us to look at something a little bit different today? I am open to most possibilities, and that's one I think we probably should take a look at.
Yeah, I think that that is exactly right. I think that we need to be very, very agile right now in our thinking. We can't follow one course. So, two final questions, and then I'm going to let you go. But this has been so fun. It's so great to see you. And let me just say, what you have done and the trajectory of your life is really quite remarkable. I hope that we can find more ways to have student athletes see what happens when good people do good things and still appreciate and value the sport. Two things. One is what is the future of the NCAA in your view? And secondly, Bob, what is the future of college athletics at the moment? You're right there. You've got your eye on the telescope.
Yeah, yeah, it's intertwined.
Yeah,
Both of those
absolutely.
things, I think. I think, if you take a look at the environment today, there is so much pressure for revenue and so much pressure for resources that we shouldn't be ignoring 2032 when many of those television contracts come up, right?
Yeah.
And we should already be thinking about, what's our approach going into that, right? Is this organization going to stay together in the same format it is right now? Is it going to come together differently, or will it break apart? What are the scenarios? And what are the outcomes that we're really looking for? I think you've really got a plan going into those contract seasons, and I'm talking about a few years before on what we want intercollegiate athletics to take a look to look like. When I came into this job, my position was that the NCAA probably, from a governance model standpoint, and I'm still actually studying this, probably tries to govern too broadly and too deeply. And so, what does that look like if the NCAA had a little bit of a lighter footprint, maybe a little bit of a narrower scope? And other word for that is sort of deregulation. So what do we want to regulate from a national level? What should we be regulating from a conference level, and an institutional level? And so I think seriously trying to answer those questions, what's most pertinent for us to be governing sort of at a national level? I think if we can answer those questions, we can get to the answer of sort of what is the future of the NCAA and the future of intercollegiate athletics. I have no doubt that there will be 100 years from now, we're all gone, that there will be an intercollegiate athletic system. What it will look like, I don't know. But for me, it's important that it stays tethered to academics and that we're growing and developing our young people. And so however we get there, those for me are sort of the central core tenets that I hope remain.
Well, Mario, you are you're a prophet because you are in a position to be able to make those kind of predictions because you're going to shape that. And I must say that I think I speak for everyone who watches this podcast. We're grateful to have you in this position. It's not a time in which there's a lot of joy because there's so much turmoil and so many pieces coming together and then flying apart. I know that, but it's great to know that you're doing well. I must say that I have great fondness for both Wisconsin and Notre Dame, and I know that Luke Fickle is there right now at
Yeah.
Wisconsin. I wish him a lot of luck. And then,
Yeah.
and his roommate during my time at Ohio State, I have my name on both their diplomas, was Mike Vrabel. And all I can say, all I can say about those two damn guys is the fact that every time they'd see me, they'd call me Orville Redenbacher. And
Oh no,
so,
oh
so
gosh.
I tell you something, the football players have a sense of humor. There's no
Yes,
doubt
yeah.
about it. So anyway, best wishes to the that 5 and that 3-year-old, and best wishes
Yeah.
to the NCAA. It's in good hands with you and Charlie. So have a
Yeah.
great day, and thank you so
Thank
very
you,
much.
President Gee. I really appreciate it. It
Yeah,
was an honor
honor
to
to
be
be
here
with
with
you.
you.
Honor to be
Thank
with
you.
you. Have a
Okay.
great
Take
day.
care. Yes,
Bye now.
sir. Bye
Bye
bye.
now.